I'm super excited to be on this panel moderating the talk about what we have for the Caribbean Future Summit here with Caribbean Perspectives and Career Dialogues. So now I'd like to welcome up my panelists who include Barry Brown, the Executive Director of Afar Media, Jadine Yarde, the CEO of Nevis Tourism. We also have Mr. Charles Lindo, from Enthusiast Tourism Foundation. We also have Shanice from Nutmeg and Sage Blog, and Carla Danes, the secretary from the U.S. Caribbean Business Council. So I'm super excited to be here with you all. So sorry about that, Dennis. Sorry about that. And super excited to be here with you all. And I have a few questions to kick off this panel today. And that starts with, tell me a little bit about your background and what brought you to the work that you do. So let's go ahead and start with Jadine, if you could go ahead and answer that question. What brought you here today?
Blessings, everyone, and thank you so much for having me today. I have definitely come from a very diverse background of work. Started in nonprofit and understanding what it means to give back. I was actually published in the Pediatrics Journal at the age of 19, doing work with the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and the Institute of Community Inclusion. My focus has been from St. John's University, which is where I obtained my degree in marketing and Chinese, where I really focused on business development. I was a knack for music, so I interned at Sony Music, where I learned a lot about just being a very aggressive and enthusiastic person. And from there, I was able to develop many industries through ad sales. I actually started my own business about 8 years ago. Goodness, the time is flying. But I have really focused on how can I give back through my own acts of service and through my own goals and aspirations. And from there, I was able to become the Nevis Tourism Authority CEO. And I've been really excited about doing that because we've been able to do amazing things during this very, very difficult time. So again, thank you so much for having me here. That's just it in a nutshell. There's a lot that has been happening, but I want to make sure I give enough time for everyone else to share their experience as well.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations on all your accomplishments. And I can't wait to hear a little bit more about some of the activities that you guys have been able to do over there. Barry, I would love for you to give us a little introduction of yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you here.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and happy Caribbean Month to everyone. Jadine, you and I have to talk about music because I'm a 3-time amateur night at the Apollo winner. I'm a singer when I'm not doing travel, but I went to Syracuse University, spent 10 years doing the marketing for Bermuda Tourism, Amtrak, Travel Channel, and many other travel brands in the advertising world. I was hired away by Travel and Leisure magazine after creating the Bermuda Jazz Festival in 1996. Spent 10 years at Travel and Leisure and American Express Corporate. Left there to launch WSJ Magazine, and 11 years ago joined Afar Media. And Afar is all about speaking to the upper echelon of travelers. We like to say that we get people off the tour bus and sitting at someone's kitchen table. So it is much more about giving back, about caring about travel, having deeper, richer, more fulfilling travel experiences. And I'm a 26-year board member of Caribbean Tourism Organization.
Awesome. You guys are going to be so excited about traveling and going places. Believe it or not, I actually was able to travel a little bit during the pandemic, and I'm like, I think I love traveling. So I can't wait to dive in a little bit more with you all. Carla, thank you. Carla, I would love for you to give us a background on yourself as well as, what brought you here today.
Thank you. Well, actually, it was your invitation. I'm very pleased, first of all, to be invited in and to be a part of this. As you know, this is my very first time, and not being a Caribbean native, but being very interested in this market, and hopefully. Being allowed to represent the U.S. Black business sector in the United States. I'm looking forward to learning much more about this market as I think the potential for Black American businesses to get involved and really spark economic development and growth in the area is my main focus. I guess getting into the question about my background and how I came here and what interested me in getting in accepting this invite. I'm a 15-year Wall Street recruiting veteran, so that's, I know it's a far cry from doing what everyone else is doing, but it was in fact my interest in global markets that led me to economic development after my career. And so I went from there into the nonprofit world. And I wanted to focus on minority business, obviously, being an African American myself. And that's when I started looking at the issues facing Black business owners and what was needed to make these businesses grow. And going global is one of the major factors that is a hindrance. And this market being the closest to the U.S. and near shore, if as far as offshore development and offshore expansion, I thought would be the most ideal situation for one particular segment that doesn't have a whole lot of experience, with that, as far as doing business outside of the country, compared to other groups that typically have an immigrant relationship to their quote unquote home countries, which Black American business owners don't share just because of our historical experience.
Absolutely. And it is very key. You mentioned a lot of important points there. The Caribbean being very geographically close to the US, and just how can we increase business relations, because to grow career opportunities, and that's a part of this panel, career dialogues, is to expand within and beyond the diaspora. So the diaspora is so broad, as you said, based on the history, it got disconnected. So how can we start that reconnecting of the diaspora, creating more job opportunities to collaborate and work together?
Absolutely. And I want more diasporans, Afro diasporans, to have ownership, not just jobs. So that's important.
Thank you. So now we're going to head over to Shanice. I would love for you to give us a little bit of a background about yourself and what brought you here today.
So good morning, everybody. I feel like I'm fangirling because you're all so amazing and I'm hearing what you're doing and I'm like, wow, like at 19, I definitely was not being published anywhere. So I'm just like, wow, amazing. So yeah, my name is Shanice Steele. I started in the nonprofit sector as well. For the last 11 years, I've been doing work around creating space for Black and Indigenous folks, specifically in Canada. I'm Afro-Indigenous, so my father hails from Trinidad and Carriacou, Grenada, and then my mom is native to Canada, or what we call Canada now. And so a lot of my work is around bridging the conversation between Black and Indigenous people to talk about things like colonialism, like fighting against oppression, white supremacy, things like that, and finding ways for us to connect on kinship and relationship building. So that's a lot of the work that I do. Canada has a huge Caribbean population, and also we have a lot of migrant workers that come up from the Caribbean and specifically work on farms, fruit farms in Canada. And so it's important that we are bridging conversations between some of our most marginalized populations that don't necessarily have access to education because of a lot of those systems of discrimination and white supremacy and colonialism. And so, yeah, a lot of my work is really just about making sure that Caribbean folks within Canada know that they are valued, know that their voices are important, connecting them to their indigeneity, because I always say Afro-Caribbean folks are just Indigenous Africans displaced from our homelands. And what does it mean to connect to indigeneity in that way? And so I started my own nonprofit called the Ashkenam Project, where I do classes and workshops for free for Caribbean folks, for Indigenous folks to connect. And then I also write a blog called Nutmeg and Sage, where I talk about my experiences as an Afro-Indigenous Caribbean queer woman living in Canada, though I'm currently in the United States right now in Illinois, but what that means to live in a space that sometimes says we shouldn't exist. So I'm really about making sure that we see ourselves in the ways that we should. So yeah, that's how I got into this work.
Awesome. Thank you, Shanice, for sharing that story and, contributing in that space. I think when people see stories, they're able to better try to tell their own story more and see what opportunities could come from that, or just let the world know like we exist and we should be a part of the world, and you're creating that space. Charles, I want you to go ahead and give us your introduction and let us know a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you and good morning. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on this program. Actually, thank you for having our island on this program. Jadine, how are you? Barry, good long time no see. How you guys doing?
Hello, my friend.
All right. It's a pleasure meeting the other panelists as well. And yes, actually, I just want to clarify a little bit about the name of my little island. We are little island 8.1 square miles. It's called St. Eustatius. And I know it's difficult to pronounce at times, but feel free to call us Stacia. That's what we call it in the name, in the voice of the locals. We say Stacia. So feel free to call us Stacia if it's if it's more convenient for you, instead of saying Saint Eustatius. Okay, getting into my career. Actually, I am a graduate, as you know, from Johnson and Wales University, which is located in Rhode Island, where I got my hospitality / master's degree, a business degree. And in doing that, before I did that, actually, I got my passion in the culinary arts when I accompanied a friend of mine in Curacao. We had to leave, of course, my little island to go to Curacao at a tender age. And I got there and I accompanied him and went to the back of the kitchen, and I saw the chef doing all these fancy things with the knives. And I'm like, hey, I want to do that. So before you know it, I got involved. Of course, a few nicks and knacks here and there during the process of learning how to use the knife. But at the end of the day, I moved on, and of course went to Rhode Island, where I furthered my education, got my degrees in food and beverage management, restaurant management, etc. And then my first professional job actually was with Wyndham Corporation, where I followed as a manager in development. And from there on, I moved to Aruba and the St. Martin. And now here am I back in my little island, St. Eustatius, where I'm actually currently been here now home for 12 years plus minus. And as the director of tourism here at St. Eustatius, many of you, as I said, and that also shows in the pronunciation of the name, we are very new to this whole development of tourism. We are virgin territory, as we like to call ourselves. But we are the new kid on the block, but we are making some very loud noises. So during this process, we hope that many of you who are out there listening would learn about us. As I said, new destination, new development. And yeah, St. Eustatius is here. We are open for business, and we're ready to welcome each and every one of you.
Awesome. Thank you all for your introduction. And so now I want to embark on a conversation. This panel is named Caribbean Perspective and Career Dialogues. And we've all talked about how we could, one, look at diverse people whether they're diverse from the race or the country or the ethnicity, right? We talked about that. And now I want to talk a little bit of how can we merge this with the careers. So I want to start a conversation with everybody involved of just answering this question of how can we bridge the gap of career opportunities as well as entrepreneurial opportunities between the US and the Caribbean. It sounds like everyone here, or Canada and the Caribbean, everyone here has had that dual experience of being in the US and experience in the Caribbean. So where are the gaps? How is your organization filling those gaps? And where do you see additional opportunities? So anyone can jump in, so we can start off with where are the gaps and how is your organization filling it? Go ahead, Barry. And we don't got to race and just jump in when you hear somebody kind of wind down.
I didn't want to stumble over anyone, but creating passion for travel and tourism has long been on my agenda. I co-created the Caribbean Youth Congress with Caribbean Tourism Organization 25 years ago because we realized that as we honor each other and work so hard to build this industry that we love, we've got to fuel the new generation. So one of the things that we do in our conferences every year is we invite 14 to 17-year-olds. Every country has their own representative. to debate topics of tourism. And when you hear a 13-year-old girl slam her fist on the table and say, you have to listen to the youth and understand what we need to help build tourism, because they want to go to Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, and they don't necessarily see travel and tourism as an inspiration that's going to build their best career. And there's so much richness in that discussion. And very much like Afar, we have a foundation that helps underserved communities get out to and explore the world. So we sent them to Belize, we've sent them to Europe to do reclamation projects. We've paired them with classes of peers in Peru. So it's wonderful thing to not only do what we do, but to inspire what's next.
Yes, and definitely having the students, the youth, see these different places gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I can be in this space doing this work. And I want to just have, Shanice, I think you look like you want to jump in the conversation about how, seeing these places, having people seeing different personalities, tell me a little bit about like how your organization is tackling that, with, getting perspective as well as like potentially developing someone's career.
Yeah, for me, it's really about hearing folks talk about what they need. I think Barry definitely touched on that, right? Is allowing folks to talk about what they need. Most people just want to be heard. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. People just want to be heard. And if you give them the space to be heard, then you can help them in the ways that they need. I think a lot of organizations have this idea that I'm going to come in with how I think you need to be helped, and then I'm going to push you into this direction, instead of listening to folks and hearing what they need and then giving them the resources to pursue whichever direction they want to pursue. As the child of an immigrant, my options for school was very limited. It was like doctor, lawyer, engineer. I didn't my family did not understand when I got into activism. Like that took a lot of time of sitting down. Not because they didn't understand the importance of advocating for Black rights. It's just they didn't understand how they brought us to Canada, and then this was the career that I chose, right? But it's really about sitting down and listening to folks about what are you passionate about? Is it tourism? Is it music? If it's being an engineer, then it's being an engineer. But how do you provide the resources for folks, especially immigrants and migrants in the context of like Canada and even the US, right? Oftentimes they don't know all of the resources that they have access to because they've only been told of this limited path. So it's making sure that they know every avenue that they can access and that you're sending them in that direction, but also supporting them, right? It's not just about here's the resources, go figure it out on your own. It's about being there with them and helping them access those resources, right? And so a lot of folks who are looking for like paths, especially migrants who are looking to get their citizenship, right? It's about giving them those other paths that they can access. That's something that I found within the Canadian context. Where I am right now, there's not a lot of Caribbean folks. But through my work in Canada, yeah, it's really been about sitting and listening because people just want to be heard. And oftentimes government organizations aren't taking the time to listen to the most marginalized voices.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. And so with that statement, Jadine, I was going to just call on you. So from what I heard from that is that, I see an opportunity for Carla to jump in to talk about how the government, the U.S. Business Council is doing that, as well as an opportunity for Jadine and Charles to jump in to say how the tourism authorities, the tourism organizations are tackling that from the ground up. So for the folks that are there and how the U.S. is kind of coming down. So either any one of you three can jump in and give those perspectives. And I think Jadine was going to say something first.
Yeah. So I think that it's all about experiences, and what we have to do is make sure that we can highlight them. We're also understand about ownership. A lot of people think that getting into tourism means that you're selling yourself. You're sharing your experience, right? That's really what we have to look at as the foundation. And so for us, what we've done as the tourism authority is equip a lot of our locals with the tools necessary to be able to create industry. So for me, I understand social media. I understand digital marketing. I will spend my time to teach you how to use Instagram. I will spend my time to teach you how to access your network, and so that you can really flourish in that sector. And I think it's really about understanding our diversity, because you can't get everything in one place. Mm-hmm. So we have to understand how we have to extend ourselves to our neighboring islands, to the United States, and to be able to work collaboratively. So for us, that's how we've been doing it. We've also worked with organizations like fashion, because we're looking at our brand not as a tourism destination, but as a lifestyle. What is Nevis? What does it exemplify? How can you wear it? How can you walk in it? What are the words that you're saying? That's how you really have to position things for people to understand that although we're different, we're still one, and we have to be able to lend to our diverse experiences.
Yeah, and when you just stated that, it reminds me. So I'm Jamaican. I don't think I've mentioned that on the panel. So I'm Jamaican, and so that reminded me of, or was it like the national slogan? Out of many, one people. So it just feels like that. It's not just you're from this island, that island. You're from this country in Africa. You're from the U.S. and African American. It is really a fullness of one people, and how can we share unique perspectives to get back to that sense of oneness. So Carla, do you want to talk about some of the resources that the U.S. Caribbean Business Council may have that people may not know about or even be overlooking, right? What are some of the resources and where can they find them?
While everyone was talking, I was actually prepared to address some of the things that they were saying. So I didn't prepare anything for your question about our resources. I'm sorry.
No problem. So you can jump in on that end as well.
Okay, because I wanted to talk about the diversification aspect and the government and the hurdles that we all face, and how that can be a hindrance to essentially the problem. Because of my work, I look at things from a macro level. And while they were talking about, working with youths and different aspects of, their career and, on a micro level, I guess the work that we do, it wouldn't see, I guess you wouldn't see, working with individuals at that micro level, but we're about opening up avenues in industries, entire industries, so that they wouldn't have to just be limited to careers in tourism, right? Or, careers in one specific area, just because the economy of a particular nation, an island nation, is limited that way. There is tremendous potential in renewable energy for many Caribbean countries, in addition to agriculture, just so many. And that's what my work is about. It's about working with these businesses, working with these U.S. businesses to put pressure on, and also working with U.S. government agencies to help put pressure on these governments that have all this red tape that really stop us from opening up opportunities in other industries, so that these economies can be diversified. I think that's the bigger issue. And anybody can jump in if they disagree with what I'm saying, considering that you're native to these places. And I don't have a whole lot of introspection into who holds the strings there, who holds the strings of power, in terms of who can change that. Is it the business community? Is it the local business communities there that can push the government? Is it the local populace, the voters, who actually need the jobs and who want these companies to come in and be able to diversify? But it's a lot of regulation that's the greatest hurdle. I'm sorry, is that my time?
Yes and no. So I want to give Charles an opportunity to speak, because we are getting close to the end of the panel. So I'll just say one quick thing about what Carla just said. I definitely like that you presented us with a lot of questions to think about, as well as expanding the different industries. That there's so many opportunities available, and you're correct. There's a lot of red tape specifically with the Caribbean of things that we can bring in, bring out, how we interact, and there should be a way. I'm happy that these conversations are happening, so that there are ways and people are thinking, okay, how can we bring down those borders? And so go ahead, Charles. I'd love to hear.
I would like to get back to the top of the opening of this entire conference, where the Honorable Dwight Sutherland, the Minister of Youth of Barbados, that's what from Barbados, where he talks about the youth so eloquently, Also, we heard from Mr. Michael Jones, where he mentioned that the Caribbean is the most tourism dependent destination on the planet. I mean, he took it and he brought it this big on the planet. Now, those two things are key to what we are talking about today. The second part of this is, the third part, what we should consider is the elephant in the room, the pandemic. Now, why I say that? It's because the pandemic has, look what we are doing right now. We have a conference, a mega conference, but none of us are standing next to each other. We are all doing this via what? Via social media, via the technological world have grown so much. Now, if we are going to talk about the youth and we are going to talk about tourism and we are going to talk about technology, that's their area. I'm just one of those guys who is working my way through technology. But the youth is the one who has those technological savvy in their head. Barry mentioned it right. He said, we need, when the young lady slam her hand on the table, we need to listen to the youth, because this is what people say tourism will bounce back. That's not true. Tourism will never bounce back. It's going to bounce forward. That's where it's going to go. We are going to bounce forward because the technological world have changed everything. And someone mentioned about tourism a few seconds ago, that people are not understanding tourism. Well, guess what? Tourism, the pandemic have just shown that tourism is everybody's business. Every single person in the world was affected because of what? We couldn't travel. Tourism went to a standstill. It became everybody's business. Everybody now is talking about tourism. Hence the reason why we talk about diversity. If you want to really, get into and I see that, I guess that's my time too. But if we want to get into the conversation of diversity, I think we can have an entire show, an entire program on this. Because when you talk about diversity, I remember I said we are the new kids on the block. And we are small islands. Center Station is only 8.1 square miles, 3,500 people plus minus. So when you talk about diversity and doing things, the youth is one of our main interests. But at the end of the day, to find innovative ways to involve them in tourism.
Thank you. So with that, we have come to a close of our panel, and I'm just going to do a quick recap and some closing remarks. I definitely want to thank Jadine, Barry, Carla, Shanice, and Charles for being here with me on this panel today, and Christine and the entire Global Startup Ecosystem team for having this conversation and inspiring us to come on. And so some of the takeaways from this panel is, there are resources out there, so research your business council, whether you're in the US or you're in the Caribbean, to find different opportunities and different industries that you can either create careers in, get job opportunities in. And then we have organizations like the tourism developments of Nevis or Stacia, all right, visit these islands. See how you can learn about these islands, right? Tourism is going to bounce forward, as Charles said, and how can we be a part of that? How can we not just go to these islands for their sand, sea, and sun, but we can also embrace that they have smart people that are able to do various careers in, whether it's a doctor, lawyer, nurse, or engineers, coders, marketing agents. There's so many different opportunities and people. Right now on my team, we employ about 3 people from the Caribbean, and they're doing work in marketing and business development. And it's, right down the block, an hour away, time difference, and so on. And, Barry and Shanice continue to put out these information so that way people can take advantage of it, to know that it's not just one type of person or personality. You can mix different cultures, but we all have to come back and root in the fact that we're not just individuals, but we are a bigger part of the Caribbean ecosystem, and an even bigger part of the African diaspora. So there's career opportunities to develop, opportunities to travel, and thank you all again for being here with me.